Howdy peeps, hope everyone's doing well. It's been a little while since I've done a video, and I was just sort of thinking back to sort of topics I could possibly talk about, because I've got to admit I haven't really been feeling it much recently in terms of, well, just producing any form of content. And whereas I did kind of kick back a little bit onto the whole cluster B type personality disorders, it's, for the most part, it's to try and to make people aware of the type of characters you might meet in life and their behavioural patterns and how they kind of might see other people. They won't have a great, in terms of NPDs, they won't have a great deal of, well, it's not about the other person, it's just about them. They're quite what would be described as selfish individuals. Anyhow, one of the videos that I did cover was dating and options in 2020, and I did that about a month ago, and that's only had, well, 60 views, but then on a channel that has been shadow banned by YouTube, I dare say, there were things that I've said over the last 5 years that have kind of led me to end up going down that path. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about a bit more regarding the options, dating options in 2020. Now, all COVID aside, I'm not even going to factor that in as to being part of the equation with regards to the options that, well, guys have as far as dating is concerned. Now, one of the things that I've always noticed when I've been on dating apps or websites and the like is a lot of people seem to be either separated, they're going through their separation phase from usually from a guy's perspective, it's going to be the women that they see are going to be separating from their ex-husbands or whatever, and also oftentimes going through a divorce, and sometimes even just out of a divorce. Now, here's some straight up advice, and the only advice I would really give in these circumstances is don't get involved with anyone that is separated or recently divorced. And that might sound a little bit harsh, but realistically speaking, I mean, if you're thinking of just like, a little bit of fun or something like that, then yeah, probably a good idea. But it's probably not too wise to invest too much romantically with them. Reason I say that is because a lot of times, they're going to have a history with their ex. And, I've been in that situation myself. I've been married, I've been through the separation process, I've been through divorce. And I can really relate to it. You see, on the one hand, now trying to look at it from a woman's perspective, a lot of the time they might feel quite jaded at the fact that the relationship went downhill. Maybe their ex walked out on them, maybe their ex cheated on them, or whatever the case may be. Either way, if they didn't end the relationship, they're going to feel quite jaded about it, and they're going to be, well, I think it's safe to say a lot of the time they're going to be trying to get back at them. Not necessarily get back with them, but definitely a bit of payback. And I don't know, personally I think it's a bit of a childish path to take if that is the case, but it is something that does happen at the end of the day. Feelings and emotions are a real rocky roller coaster when it comes to some women. So what sort of made me think of this is I was thinking back to a past relationship. A couple of past relationships for that matter. One of them wasn't mine. It was an ex-girlfriend's mum. She was getting divorced from her husband, and unfortunately there was infidelity there. He was very naughty, and I didn't really appreciate what he did. Basically cheated on her. And, seeing it from the other side of the fence, although she was putting on this big facade of how happy she was that he was now out of her life, the truth being told, she was quite jaded, she was quite upset, and in a lot of emotional turmoil. Now, these are back in the days when I was on Facebook, and so was she, and my girlfriend at the time was as well. So, of course, needless to say, everything that went up on Facebook was to do with how much of a really good time she was having. But if truth be told, I was seeing a different story to what was being posted on social media. So you could argue that I knew something closer to the truth. Anywho, she went on about having a divorce party and all this, that and the third. And, I ended up sort of like, I got a few minutes alone with the sort of thing. I said, why are you doing this? It's not how you really feel. You're just being fake, And, she obviously, got a bit whimpery and everything. Shed a few tears and all that. And she said, I'm just hurting so much. I'm like, no, I get it. I understand. But you're better off not saying anything. You're better off not doing anything. Just work on yourself. Just get yourself in a place where, you are over all the relationship woes and everything else. And, you still, at the time she was still going through a divorce. And I said, look, your best thing you can do is just take some time out for yourself. Don't get involved with anyone, because anything that you do at the moment, you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And she was dating and stuff like that. And I said to her, you can't, you're not being honest with these guys that you're dating. They might be going in with the best of intentions, and you're not coming from the right place. Anywho, needless to say, eventually she got through her separation woes and went through the divorce and all of that. And, well, I'd like to think that the guy she ended up with, she was happy with. Whether that was the case or not, I don't know. But it's just an example of the sort of situations that people go through when they're getting divorced and going through separation. A lot of the time in terms of women, I would argue that they're acting out. Now, to give an example of another kind of situation, thinking back to an ex I was with, and similar sort of circumstances. I don't know if he'd walked out on her or whatever, but it doesn't matter. I'm assuming he did because of the sort of the patterns I was seeing, which at the time I didn't really recognise. I wasn't paying a great deal of attention. It's amazing the rose tinted glasses and the effect that they can have on the individual when it affects us directly and we're in that situation. But anyway, she wanted to dye her hair once, and she said she was going to the shops and picking up some hair dye and all this, that and the third. And I was like, all right, yeah, cool, crack on, whatever. And she said when she got back from the shops that she picked up the colour that she wanted to dye her hair, but then she changed her mind because her ex's new girlfriend had a similar hair colour. And I was a bit sort of like, why do you care what he thinks? Why is this even a thing? Why? And so she sort of defended her position a bit, as if to say, well, it's, I don't want him to think that I'm trying to re-attract him and I want nothing to do with him and this, that and the third. And at the time in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, you're involved with someone else now, so why do you care what he thinks? And why would you assume that he would care what you do? He's with someone else now. Anyway, she ended up not dyeing her hair the colour that she wanted to dye it for that reason. And then the more I sort of thought about that, after the sort of relationship breakdown and everything, and, as you sort of, I don't know about anyone else, but I spend quite a bit of time thinking about, not about the what ifs, but the potential for the red flags that I might have missed. And I suppose it's only human to do it, but sort of what could I have done differently to, for things to have not panned out the way that they did. But realistically speaking, I think no matter how I look at it, it was safe to say that she wasn't with me for the right reasons, and that's just the way it was. I was, I was being used pretty much, which, yeah, that's a bit of a kicker as well, especially when you sort of come out thinking about it and you sort of look back at these situations and you're like, well, at the end of the day, she was going through a separation and a divorce and everything else, and there was obviously feelings there, and, I think it was a shame, really, as to why we ended up going our separate ways and the way things just sort of panned out. So that is why I'd say, you know, if you're going to get involved with anyone, you're going to be on the dating scene, then, you know, if they're separated or recently divorced, you're better off not really investing anything emotionally, because I think you could just, you know, we've all heard the term rebound relationships and all that, right? Yeah, I could argue maybe it is one of them. And it was something that sort of crossed my mind, but, you know, rose-tinted glasses often make you sort of stop thinking about these things pretty sharpish, because you don't want to think of that. And, you know, especially when you've had a few breakups in the past where you're being, you know, you're sort of used in that, which, yeah, kind of got to put my hands up a little bit. I was used about 5 years ago, and obviously with that one, the ulterior motive was just to try and get a house out of it, you know. Talk about a selfish bitch. But it's not that there's any hard feelings, I'm just calling it out for what it is. But needless to say, that if you're going to get involved in the dating game, don't invest emotionally in someone that's recently separated or recently divorced, for that matter, because there's still going to be a lot of emotions. And I think a lot of time some women at least, won't go through the phases of just getting over themselves. I think a lot of them do act on impulse, and they'll do all sorts of wild, crazy shit, which, you know, doesn't do them any favours in the long run. It just does them further psychological damage, and, you know, they might not necessarily be great at psychological damage control, you know, when it's self-inflicted. But it's one of them things, really. And it's kind of one of them, really. You know, it's not that you're not compatible with that person. It's just, I'd say that you're probably in that moment not compatible at the time, because they're not in a good place, and you might be seeing things through rose-tinted glasses, and as a result of that, it probably won't end too well. Now, one of the things that I will say to kind of counter things that I've said in the video, or not to sort of counter them as such, but something that I do kind of particularly respect within women, is when they take the time out to work on themselves and actually hit that reset button, you know, when all feelings of resentment and rejection have gone. That is when I would say they're in a better place to get involved with someone romantically. Now, a lot of guys are going to be thinking, well, you're red pill, you've talked MGTOW and this, that and the third, and it's like, no, I have. At the same time, these, you know, like I've often said, you know, MGTOW for a lot of guys is just a passing place. It's just almost like a coping mechanism, like many other things are, you know. We've all got our own little ways of coping with things, and I guess as a content creator, you could argue sometimes even I use it to kind of lash out a little bit. It's not that I'm hurting at this particular moment in time. It's more to do with trying to help others not put themselves into these little traps, whereas they might find themselves in a situation similar to what I did, whereas, you know, you go in with the best intentions, and unfortunately the other person might have the best intentions in mind. Well, it might be the best intentions for them, but it sure as hell won't be the best intentions for you. And then you've got all the aggro to deal with, the sort of emotional pain and everything else to deal with, and then trying to make things make sense in your mind, if that is something you do. It's certainly something I do in mine. So yeah, I guess the point of this one is, obviously, if you're dating someone that's recently separated or recently divorced, don't take them too seriously, because at the end of the day, you know, there's every chance that they're going to have a lot of feelings for their ex, because they have had time invested, and, you know, they've probably been through a lot. I mean, in some cases, they might have even had kids with them, you know. So even with that, you know, a lot of sort of, as a MGTOW content creator as well, I suppose, well, I'm mostly red pill these days. You know, you have to bear that in mind as well. And unfortunately, you know, sort of digressing back onto the topics of people that have cluster B personality disorders, they will use the children as weapons and tools, basically, to get back at the other. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that women do it all the time against guys. Sure, it is a thing that does happen. But realistically speaking, guys can do it to women as well, and they do it to women as well. And what kind of really fucks me off in all of that is they don't see the damage that they're doing to their own children. It's like, really? Well, but that's kind of a separate topic, I suppose. You could argue that it's still kind of related if that is a situation that you might find yourself in, but whatever. One of them. Anyhow, I hope you found this informative and useful in some way, shape or form. I hope you're all enjoying the weekend, and until the next one, stay cool and peace out.